this potion for the suspected adulteress on Facebook. That's a little too not Facebook stuff. So we'll just record it because we are recording the entire Torah, and we will record it and put it on the put it on the what's it called, on the Chumash. So we're holding yesterday's Chumash. You know what? Remind me, we'll do the prayer afterwards. I forgot to do the prayer for the sick. Let's get started, and then we'll do the prayer afterwards, especially for our brothers and sisters in the Holy Land who desperately need our prayers and our good wishes. So we are in the middle of yesterday's Chumash. I believe we were learning about we started off discussing about the woman was acting very frivolous and very unmodest, and it was a known fact, and the husband was very concerned even about specific men that the woman was associating with, and the husband said to the wife, I'm really concerned, I don't want you to be alone with this guy. And she didn't listen, and they don't know what happened in the time she was alone. They know that she was alone with that guy for enough time for something to happen, for the act for them to be together, but they don't know if what happened in behind the closed doors. And they're going to the Torah is going to make this potion that will verify what took place, and some magical potion that will actually be able to tell us if this woman cheated or not. So that's what we're holding in today's Chumash. Verse 15. The man will bring his wife ela kohen to the kohen. The hevi as karbana, and they'll bring the sacrifice. Right? We studied this verse yesterday, so I'm just going to go through it quickly without the Rashis. They bring a sacrifice. What's the sacrifice? A sirus ha'efa kemach, a flour offering, right? Because among the different sacrifices there was animals. This is going to be a very low class offering. Soirim, made out of barley, animal food. Lo yitzak al Hashem, and don't put any oil on it. V'lo yitin al levayna, don't put any frankincense, any spices on it. Minchas kenoisi, because this is a sacrifice of jealousy. So although for a negative thing, it still is requiring the sacrifice. Minchas zikarim askeres oven, it's to remember the sin that is being brought. Okay. The hikriv oisa hakoyin. The koyin will bring her forth, or bring the woman forth. The hemida lefnei Hashem, and will put her in front of Hashem. We're going to learn soon that he's going to stand there at the entrance to the temple, actually, right in the busy zone of the temple. We'll see exactly what happens here. The koyin will take the holy waters. Interesting Rashi on these holy waters. What makes waters holy? Did I freeze? Can you guys hear me? David, can you hear me? Shake your head. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah.
It looks like my camera froze, but as long as you can hear me. Okay. V'hikriv oisa hakoyin, and the koyin will bring, I'm sorry, v'lakach hakoyin mayim kedoshim, verse 17, the koyin will take the holy waters. So Rashi says, what's holy waters? What's a Poland spring water? He says, this is water that was in the kior. If you guys remember when we learned about the different items in the temple, so there was in the courtyard, there was two things. There was a giant altar, which they would burn all the sacrifices on. And next to the altar, right before the Mishkan, as you'd enter the Mishkan, there was a copper wash basin. Right? Today, we know when the Levi always washes the kohen's hands before he goes to do duchening. So in the temple, they had a copper wash basin. And they would take the water from there. And Rashi says, very interesting, there's very interesting significance to taking the water that's going to be used from that copper earthenware. What's the significance? Is that that copper hand washing basin was made out of mirrors. Which mirrors was it made out of? When the husbands were in Egypt, and they came back home from work, working very hard. The women dressed up, made themselves beautiful, and flirted with their husbands. They took the mirrors and they looked at the husbands and they said, who's more beautiful, me or you? Let's look in the mirror. And they caused their husbands to be interested in them, and they had children. They got their husbands excited to want to have intimacy with them, and they had children, and those were the children who left Egypt. So these are considered righteous women that want to be together with their husbands to create the future of the Jewish people. This woman who we're talking about here is exactly the opposite. So they take the water from the earthenware representing the holiness of the Jewish woman, and they make the woman drink from that holy water. So that's again, Rashi is explaining the verse that the Kohen takes holy water. Where is it from? It's from that copper water thing. The kli cheres, and they put it in the earthenware vessel. Rashi says another interesting significance to the earthenware vessel. He says when the woman got the man to cheat with her, when she was a married woman, she drank him from nice wine goblets, fancy wine in fancy cups. So here, right, she got the guy intoxicated. So here we're giving her to drink out of earthenware vessels, low-class vessels, and the opposite of what she did when she sinned with this man. Umina offered, very interesting, gets more interesting. So they take earthenware vessel, they take water out of the Kohen's wash basin, they dig out from the earth of the temple. Imagine, they start digging in the temple. From the earth that's in the tabernacle. He goes into the tabernacle and he takes out from the floor dirt, and he puts it inside that holy water. So you have a concoction so far, a potion of water and earth from the Mishkan. And then the Kohen takes the woman and places him in front of Hashem. Rashi says, what does it mean in front of Hashem? That we already said he puts her in the front of the temple. And Rashi says there was a process here. They would try to do whatever they can to make the woman confused and stress her out in order to get her to admit that she sinned if she did sin. So in other words, they didn't want to use this potion. They would try to do everything they could not to use this potion. This was only in case of emergency what kind of emergency? Where they wouldn't know if the woman sinned or not. They'd much rather her admit, yes, I was in the room and yes, something happened over there and I sinned with that guy. So what would they do? They would sort of run her energy out by making her walk from place to place in order that she should become agitated. So yes, I did it. If she really did it, they would try to get her to admit. I think one of the reasons is because they would have to erase God's name and they did not want it. They don't want this woman to die in this death of her exploding, as we're going to see. So they would rather the woman admit. So part of the process is they would move her from place to place to get this the person to admit. L'fnei Hashem, upares roisha, and they would let out her hair. Rashi says they would unbraid her hair. And he says actually something very interesting here, that for Jewish women, walking around without their hair covered is not nice. It's disgraceful for them. Actually, here is a very famous source for why observant women wear a sheitel and a tichel, hats and hair coverings. And part of the source is from here, which we see that it is not respectful, that a respected woman wears a hat, wears a hair covering, wears a head covering on top of her hair. So this woman is acting immoral. So as those days, immoral, part of showing, I guess, the immoral is they would let her hair out, unbraid her hair. And they would stand in L'fnei Hashem in front of God. And that is, Rashi brings here, there was a very famous door. There's a whole story behind it, how there was a man called Nicanor who built two absolutely gorgeous doors to put in front of the entranceway to the temple. And there was a whole story how there was a major storm and they threw out one door and he was really sad. And he said, Hashem, if you throw out the next door because the boat was going to capsize, I'd rather be thrown into the water with it. I spent all my life savings in order to create the most beautiful entrance doorway for Hashem's temple. And the storm subsided and miraculously the door traveled along in the ocean with them as the boat got to where it was going to go. And they built those doors in the front entrance with gorgeous, magnificent doors. And that is where they would bring this woman. So they take this woman and put her in front of Hashem, meaning at the entranceway where everybody enters and exits the temple, that's where she would stand. Uparas Raisha, and they undid her hair, took out her braids, took off her hat, and they would place on her hands the sacrifice. In order, again, stress her out, get her to admit it. We don't want to do this. Admit your crime if you did it. Again, we don't want Hashem's name to be erased in this thing. So they're involving her in the sacrifice. It was together, the Kohen would put his hands under the suspected adulterous woman's hands, and they would do whatever they did with the sacrifice. We're going to see that's, and the kohen had in his hands, sorry, in the kohen's hands. We'll see soon. The kohen's hands were under her hands, but not yet. The kohen had his hands held on to the water, embittered waters that will become bitter once she drinks them. The waters will end up being very bitter for her, for the woman who's going to drink them if she sinned. And the kohen makes her swears. And the kohen says to the woman as they're standing in front of the entranceway to the Azara, to the courtyard, to the temple, you always start with the positive. Whenever it's a capital punishment, as Rashi says, you always start with the positive, and you say, look, if nothing happened, if no man slept with you, laid with you, and you did not go off the path, fall off the boat, right? You did not go astray from your husband and become impure from with another man from your husband. Inaki, you will be clean, my dear. From this bitter waters. If nothing happened, you will be. If not, then you will be found guilty. We learn out from the positive and the negative. You will suffocate from this water here. But you always start with the positive. And for you, if you did go astray, and you did defile yourself, you did become impure, and another man had his seed enter you, that's not your husband's, if that's God forbid the case, the kohen makes the woman swear, with a curse swear. So it's a swear and the curse together. And he says to the woman, God will turn you, will make you into a curse and a promise among your people. Meaning, you know what the people are going to say? I swear not to be like this woman. In other words, you're going to become the icon of the people who make the swear that, like righteous people say, I swear that I'm not like this woman. In other words, it'll be embarrassment. It'll be a swear and a curse. Everyone will say, you should be, don't be cursed like that person. So she'll be known for a swear and a curse. May the God of this made this person, again, will become a famous icon, and people will use their swears and their curses in her name. And amongst your people, you'll become a curse, a swear. By your hip falling down. The hip will be the first part of the woman to swell, to rupture. And then the stomach, and then the stomach will swell. And the reason is the hips will go first is because the sin happened first in the hips and then moved on to the stomach. So that's the way that the person will pass away. And when the waters that are going to curse the body will enter her, in your insides, it will check and will go around to the entire body. It won't just stay in the hips and the belly. It will start with those. It will start with those, but it won't just stay there. It will be recognized in the whole body. Litzbais batan, and very interesting here. He says, not just will it make your hips and your belly swell and rupture, but it will make the man who you sinned with also belly and hips will rupture. So don't think that it's equal punishment. Whatever happens to the woman happens to the man. In this case only, it is that the husband is bringing his wife because he suspected her and is going through her. But don't think that it's only going to happen to the woman. It's equal punishment to men and the woman. This is button and the thighs will fall. Isha, and the woman says, Amen, Amen. Amen, Amen. Yes, yes. In any case, I accept the swear and I accept the curse. And I accept, even if it's this man, maybe there's another man that we don't know about, because my husband thinks it's this guy, but it's another guy, that the same curse will be applied. And also, I never cheated, not when I was betrothed and not when I was married or any other case, a levirate marriage, so on. So the woman is agreeing to the curse. Because of us, and then we're going to make the next part of the potion. They'll write down on a Torah scroll, like on a scroll, on a parchment, they will write down these curses, the Sefer Umacha Esmei Hamarim, these last verses that we just said, and they will erase them. They will rub off the ink that's on those parchment into the concoction, the water and dirt from the temple, and the water from the kiyar, from the wash basin into the hishkas isha. They will forcibly give it to the woman to drink, which means that once the potion has been made, the woman cannot back out and say, I don't want to drink it, because we already erased Hashem's name. We force her to drink it, unless she says that I'm ready to admit and I did really sin. And in that case, there's no point in checking anymore because she admitted to it. And they give her to drink the waters that will embitter her body, the cursed waters that will be for a curse for her, and the water will enter her and become bitter for her. So Rashi is just telling us that it's a little out of order, because really you bring the sacrifice. Remember, we mentioned that there was a meal offering sacrifice that was associated with the story. Don't think we start with this. We don't start with this story. We're going to first do the next verse. The kohen will take the meal offering that, remember, the woman was holding it. The kohen was holding the bitter water, and she was holding the meal offering, the sacrifice. The kohen will take it from her. He'll put his hands under her hands. And what do they do with many sacrifices? They will wave it. They bring it back and forth, up and down, right, in all directions of the world, where Hashem is, and the kohen does it together with her. And then the kohen will bring part of it, will sacrifice it on, bring it close, to the sacrifice. What does he do? Verse 26, the kohen will scoop, as the kohen does with all the meal offerings. He takes a fist and he uses his 3 middle fingers and scoops out a fistful from that flour offering as karasa, remembrance, on the altar. And he will burn on the fire, just like they burn parts of the sacrifices of animals. He will burn a little bit of the fistful scooped out on the altar. And then after you bring the sacrifice, then you give her to drink this water. And what happens? And she drinks the water. And it was in nitma if she wasn't pure, and she did act unfaithfully. She defiled and was unfaithful to her husband. And the water will turn into very bitter waters. Tav says bitna, and her belly will swell. V'nafli yerechan al will fall. So now he's saying that the water checks out to see if she sinned. The magical waters can go as it enters her body. It will see if she sinned. And the woman will become a curse among her people. And it's especially embarrassing when people, it's always more embarrassing when people know who you are. So the greater embarrassment, the busha, is where people know her. And what happens if she didn't sin? And she's really pure. She never did anything wrong. She didn't sin with this guy. She didn't sin with another guy. Niksa the nizra zara. She shall be exempted, but not just that. She clean, but she will actually bear seed. And Rashi says that means that if she gave birth in pain, she will now give birth easily, and her children will be even more beautiful. And basically, the water has the opposite effect, has a blessing. This, to wrap it up, is the laws of the jealousy. When a woman went astray and defiled under her husband, she became defiled, she became impure. What if the guy is a jealous kind of guy? And he is jealous over his wife. Again, thank God we have this water of him and Hashem to bring the woman to Hashem. The kohen will do all these laws that we mentioned and will verify if she sinned or not. So we have a method of verification if a sin is done or not. And the man will be clean from his sin. In other words, if the wife does die, the husband might all of a sudden start feeling guilty because he caused the death of his wife. So the Torah says, no, he didn't cause her death. She caused her death by doing this thing. He shouldn't feel responsible. And also it's telling you that if she does come out pure, they could go back to be married. The story's over. Marriage could go back. I don't know how you could have such a happy marriage after the situation, but they do go back and they could no problem getting married together. And the woman, if she did sin, will carry she's the one who brought about the sin, and therefore she's responsible to carry whatever came because of the sin. Any questions or comments on this very interesting chumash that we have today of how the Torah would deal with the suspected adulteress and the potion? Any questions or comments? No, we good? Okay, fine. We'll move right on to Jarasha. You wanted to say something, David? No? Okay.